So how do we listen? What attitude do we take as a listener?
I think as a listener, if you change the letters around in the word listen, it spells silent. And that's quite
All
key.
these years.
It's an anagram. If we want to listen, it's really easy or helpful to be silent, yeah.
Oh, shut up now.
You can put that in the frame, silent, listen, yeah. Yeah.
There is a phrase, life and death are born together. Rich or poor, high or low, like sound and like silence, blends into one. We bring with us cultural attachments, belief systems and so forth, which frame how we see our world. Do you think we've removed ourselves from the reality that death is part of life?
I don't think it's a helpful mindset to deny death. Is it a fear of death, maybe? People not sure what happens after death. You know, the staunch evolutionist would, you know, we're dust and we're going to go dust again, and that's it, no more life. Then there's those who are more spiritual, going to have another afterlife, or I'm going to come back as something else. And there's that fear of the unknown. It could be anxiety levels going there. They just shut that off so they don't have to think about it.
One final question, if I may. I've spent almost a decade as a celebrant. I've done a number of funerals, and they are now often called life celebrations, and that is a wonderful thing, to be able to look at a life and say, these are the things that resonate, that made this person special to me. But I also see so often a reluctance to celebrate a life, and I understand it. I need space to feel the anger and the pain. And this 1 hour, this ceremony, can never be the grief processes. It's only a moment in time, perhaps. I'm just wondering about your thoughts on that. Is so much we place on this one moment, this one ceremony of saying goodbye, but it's not all things. And I say that as a celebrant.
Yeah.
I can't see how it can be.
No, I mean, I think you're right. And what is the famous advice for weddings is spend more time preparing for the marriage than for the wedding. I think that's the same with funerals. We need to spend more time looking at the life of the person who's died than just that 1 hour of the funeral. This would be my short answer.
Indeed. I mean, it's often the things that go back of stage, if you like, rather than front of stage. Doing things, as you say, the discussions that we have around process rather than the process itself. That sounds a little esoteric.
Well, I think the person who's grieving, the loved one, the children, the family, they need the visit the week later, the month later, the 2 months later, not just on that, centred on that funeral. And I think people need to remember, they're not going to get over it in a month or 2 months or 3 months, and I need to treat it as if it's still there and give them their space to talk about it.
Well, I'm the friend knocking on the door 2 months after someone has died. You know why people don't do that? Because they're afraid. They do not know what to say. I don't know what to say. What do I say when I see this person? I know their pain. How do you behave then?
I think if you sincerely ask, how are you doing? Like really, put a really in there and ask, how are you really doing? It's been 2 months since you lost so-and-so. Do you want to talk about it? The invitation. And if they say, no, I don't want to talk about it,
let's have a beer.
That's fine. It's fine. Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of that. It's an open question. Do you want to talk about it? Yeah. How are you feeling now? 2 months down. And 2 months is still fresh. 2 months. You know, when people talk about grieving from 6 months to 2 years is kind of normal. So let's not try and rush it. You know, the mother that lost her son through suicide and the boss said, take as long as you need. And then a month later rang up and said, are you ready to come back to work now? She quit. Didn't want to be part of it. It's just, yeah, I think there's that insensitivity around giving people time. Let them do it. We've talked to a lady who 8 years ago lost her father, and she's still feeling it as if it was a week ago. And we say, is that unhealthy? Well, when she learned to talk about it, it was fine. It's learning to live with the loss, and it's not a bad thing to still be living and being sad about that loss. Yeah.
So those outside of the grief, if you like, looking on at someone who is grieving, is there a tendency to be a bit judgmental, families? I mean, can we be a bit, come on, hurry up, after a period of time, that almost like, oh, well, you're being a bit of a victim about this?
Absolutely, and I think that's sad when we judge someone for not getting over it. You know, just because I've quote unquote got over it. You know, that's not. Maybe they haven't, and it's okay.
You come from a Christian background, so I think we should end this. If you were to bring your faith into this, what do you say to a person who suffers grief?
The first thing that jumps into my mind is that Jesus wept when he saw his friend who died and the sisters mourning his loss. He wept with them. Yep.